Hey, welcome back to Unschooled Theology. I'm your host, Derek, and today we're going to look at Genesis 4, verses 3 through 5, so let's read those real quick right now. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offerings he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. All right, so here we take a look at the offerings that these two have brought for the Lord, right? And so we've talked before about the idea of Cain being very earthy, Abel being very spiritual. So I guess what are the kinds of offerings you might bring from either end of the spectrum, I guess. And so Cain's offering here, it's presented first briskly and without much detail, right? All we see is that Cain brought some fruit of the ground. So what exactly do we take from that? Well, it probably wasn't the best because that would have been highlighted as it was with Abel, right? This probably would have said at least his best fruits, his first fruits, his finest fruits. It appears though here that Cain just kind of grabbed some random fruit he had grown and offered that to the Lord. Abel's offering though, is explicitly absolutely the best of what he has to offer. He offers the first of his flock, and not only that, the best part of that sheep too. It should be noted he offers the fat portions because those are certainly an ancient would have understood this. Those are the most delectable, right? And again, this flies a little bit in the face of the idea of this occurring during some sort of period when meat wasn't being eaten. That seems to not be the case, really. So any Israelite or really ancient man of any sort, for that matter, would immediately recognize the difference between these two offerings, right? Were you to ask them which one they prefer, 100% of them would take Abel's over Cain's. Meat to the ancient man was far superior than any kind of produce, and then the best of that compared with average produce is not even close. It would have been no surprise then to ancient man that God would have favored Abel's offering and ignored Cain's. It just sort of makes sense. Well, he offered him the best of the best of the best, and he offered him just something. And so there's a few interesting lessons, right, for us in considering what Cain offered, yet, was still rejected in regards to what of ourselves we should be giving to God. It's worth noting that it is not that Cain offered God something that was spiteful to God, right? He didn't offer up, I don't know, a child or something. There was no child sacrifice or anything like that. It wasn't like he was trying to be spiteful. We're not told that here. And it's not something that we would call the polar opposite of Abel, right? I mean, going to the idea of ancient man, like ancient man still would have eaten the fruit, They wouldn't have rejected the fruit. It's just that if the offer was on the table between the two, they would choose the meat. So we don't see rotted fruit offered up. That's not described. Instead, though, what we see is that Cain was willing to give of himself. He was willing to make an offering. He was willing to sacrifice to God, right? In some ways, maybe not understanding what's going on here, if we could just look at it and sort of separate ourselves from it a little bit, especially separate the results of these offerings, you might look at that and say, oh, he's a godly man. He's sacrificing to God. He's giving something to God. He must be a godly person. He's not someone rejecting the authority of God. However, it is clear that he offered up some fruit and not his best fruit. And that provides us, I think, some real insight when we look at the acceptance of Abel's versus the rejection of Cain's into just what God asks of us, right? He asks us to give nothing less than the very best. Nothing less than the absolute best of what we have, we give to him. Anything short of that is worth rejecting, right? And that's what Cain finds out. Cain offers up just some fruit. Abel offers up the best that he could ever offer. Now, truth be told, we probably can't be like Abel ourselves, short of obviously the sanctification of Christ. But that is the direction we need to go, I guess. And we all are sort of more in the Cain realm, I think, in our lives, but we need to move ourselves more and more and more in the Abel direction in terms of what we're offering and what we're giving to God. And that is, that's really the lesson I think we can take from this, is God demands the best of your best. That's the sacrifice that he will accept. That's the sacrifice that is good enough. And anything less than that, it's worth rejecting altogether. So, all right, with that, we'll move on to the next couple verses next time. So in the meantime, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that episode. Like or review or whatever is the appropriate thing on your platform of choice. Rumble it if you're over there. And be sure to comment. I'll take a look at those, and send me an email if you'd like, unschooltheology@protonmail.com, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.